Welcome to a special edition of Context and our annual Year in Review. I'm Lorna Duick. Over the past year, our team explored everything from natural disasters to human rights abuses, war, famine, and religious freedoms. Stay with us as we revisit some of our most memorable moments of 2017.
I won.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has made good on his promise to legalize marijuana. Well, today it seems sexual harassment is facing new determination of zero tolerance. You may be surprised to learn from a few of our guests that not all people think Trump is a monster.
I think still the Canadian media is pretty skeptical still of what's going to happen. So, but I think, we all have to really give him a chance.
Joining us now is Michael Ware, part of outgoing President Obama's Faith Council. You actually think this last presidential campaign did spiritual damage. Explain that. What's happening?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, so I went around the country talking about the election, and it became like clockwork that the last questioner or the second to last questioner would begin to cry as they were asking their question. And I'd never experienced anything like that in politics before. And it became clear to me that there was something deeper going on than just sort of policy disagreements. People are actually going to politics to get their emotional needs met. And politics can do a lot of things, but meeting emotional, spiritual, inner needs is not one of them. And when we give politics that power, then we're setting ourselves up for failure.
January began with the heartbreaking story of an Afghan war vet who captured a national tragedy affecting those who serve our military. Lionel Desmond shot his wife, daughter, and mother in their rural home in Nova Scotia before killing himself. Lionel Desmond reportedly suffered from PTSD. In St. John's, we spoke with Jamie McWhirter, who lives with PTSD every day. Jamie, the country is heartbroken at the loss of an entire family in Nova Scotia on account of PTSD. When you heard about that tragedy, you actually immediately began to find if you could find veterans there in Upper Big Trackety. Why?
Well, we're all saddened by it. I mean, it's another brother lost. I mean, you look at the statistics right now. There's been more soldiers that went over to Afghanistan that have died from suicide than have actually died over there. So it's, we're all saddened by the whole thing.
Talk to us about your family helping you. Tell us the story about your 6-year-old who caught you in a trigger place in a shopping mall.
Well, I learned quickly that I first tried to hide it from my kids, and kids are smart. You can't hide it from them. So I knew to beat PTSD, I needed my family. So I've taught grounding techniques, which are like when a soldier gets triggered and if he deals with anger and he gets angry, I call them grounding techniques so they can settle back down and calm themselves again. So I taught my son, Cody, who was 6 at the time, some of these grounding techniques. And one day he wanted to go to the mall, and I'm not good in crowds, but I want to be a good dad, so I go to the mall, and as soon as we get in there, there's a lot of people, and I'm already like looking at everybody, thinking everyone is looking at me and everyone is judging me, and then I look for the exits, and then I'm wondering who is a threat there, and Cody, at 6 years old, could see that I was triggered, and he took me by the hand, and he said, "Dad, I need to go to the bathroom. Can you come with me?" So he led me to the bathroom, and right then, I had a purpose. I wasn't thinking about the crowd. I was thinking about my son, so I had a purpose. So I just followed him to the bathroom. And he brought me right into the stall, which at the time I thought was weird because he never wanted me in the stall with him. But as soon as we got in the stall, he locked it, and he took me by the hand. He said, "Dad, I don't need to pee. I could tell you were triggered. Do you want to do a breathing exercise or a grounding technique?"
Wow.
And I started to cry right there, and fell to my knees, and I hugged him because I knew I wasn't alone. I mean, even at 6 years old, he he knew how to calm me down. He knew how to bring me back.
Jamie, you've just done so much to tell us all that we need each other on this. Thank you for serving our country overseas, and thank your wife and kids for hanging in there with all of this and teaching the nation. Thank you. And a horrific crime against the Muslim faith in Canada, as 6 Muslim men lost their lives as they prayed together at the Islamic Cultural Center in Quebec City. Our reporter Molly Thomas brought us that story from Quebec.
We have 17 children. It's terrible.
17 children lost their father.
Children.
Mohammed Libidi's quiet neighborhood is lined with tears. The cards in the snow tell a story no one ever wanted to hear. 6 men gunned down at their local place of worship. Another 3 are still in intensive care. This is Canada's first physical attack on people of faith.
This is a rare case. This is not a general feeling.
The alleged shooter, 27-year-old Alexandre Bissonnette, held radicalized right-wing views. He is described by people that knew him as a racist fanatic. Since Sunday's attack, Montreal police say there's been a spike in hate-related incidents.
But we're not different from other societies. We have the same devils in our society.
Young Muslims like Iba say they won't be intimidated.
I don't have any fear, but I'm just still have compassion.
However, the outpouring of community support may be changing the conversation.
We need to let them know who we are and get to know who they are and learn to practice what Christ has taught us, to love our neighbor.
Not only integrate those peoples, but to be in relationship with those peoples.
That relationship has already started online. Quebecers and fellow Canadians pitching in for families of the victims.
With millions displaced, families torn apart, and more than 400,000 dead, our Molly Thomas also brought us a report from Syria on how 6 years of civil war is affecting the most vulnerable, the children.
In a small Turkish bazaar, it's easy to spot the Syrian.
In the old city, I always have 2 shops.
In the old souk.
In the old souk, yes.
In the old souk. People know that from around the world because it was a very famous
In the mini
place.
street, it's maybe in my shop here, about 50 kind of pieces. But in my shop in Syria, more than 250.
Obada Shama left it all behind 3 years back. Today, he barely breaks even, putting his dreams on hold for that of his children.
And my daughter, she's in elementary school.
But Shama's kids are the lucky ones. In Turkey, only 39% of Syrian children are in the classroom. For sisters, Ruqayya and Halima, learning is a luxury. School was a dangerous risk for them back in Syria.
We were hearing screamings. We knew that on the opposite side of the street they are kidnapping and killing a family.
So the family fled to Turkey. But 4 years in, their father cannot find a stable job.
When it's raining, it's not that good.
Yeah, there's like holes in the ceiling and the water can come down.
They live in a makeshift shelter on someone else's property.
We burned those empty boxes, hid to warm up the house.
The girls have an older brother. He's in school, but he doesn't know that he will soon have to drop out.
It's not a matter of me wanting to teach my children or not. It's a matter of basic stuff, like bread is more important than education at this point.
In Syria, access to education is the biggest hurdle. 2.1 million children are missing class. That's because school attacks are normal, and 1 in 4 educational facilities are destroyed, used for shelter, or occupied by armed groups.
So students were really afraid to go to school. As like an alternative, we cooperated with their parents, we cooperated with local councils, education directorate. And what we did is that we made alternative education, which is home-based education. Let's say like in every alley we'll make 2 or 3.
So in people's homes.
Exactly.
Do people still believe in education?
People right now and students are feeling like we will build our future and we will complete and resume education and we will not give up at all.
Well, 2017 back in Canada was also the year Canadians could commit suicide with the help of a doctor. Medically assisted death became legal in Canadian law. There were 1,179 of those deaths in the first 6 months of 2017 alone. Context asked where Christian conscience fits into this issue. The numbers are shockingly high to me. Helen, let's start with you. You're actually getting engaged because you think another chapter is opening up on conscience, and that is that mental illness is the next frontier. Also, minors, children are under 18, being allowed to accept this. But you're concerned as a mental health nurse. Why?
It takes me some time to establish a therapeutic relationship with someone, and if they're depressed about the impact of their illness, it takes me a long time to help them adjust to the illness. It's if I had to immediately refer someone for medically induced death, I wouldn't have the opportunity to do the healing work that's what I've dedicated my life to.
Okay, Dr. Coella, why is this so important to your concept of your work and your God?
Well, I'll explain it by way of an example. And the point is that I feel that all people have equal value. So when an 18-year-old comes to me who's suicidal, I will try to protect them. I will try to hospitalize them. We will try to pursue how they can find meaning in life again. In 10 years at the Montreal General Hospital, when I was in Montreal, we had one patient who had to be palliative sedated for pain control. So all these people have been able to find value in their lives. And I am never able to say that, no, you don't have value, I'm going to help you end your life. I can't go there because that absolutely tramples the basic idea that all people are equal in dignity and value.
This year, thousands of Haitian asylum seekers illegally walked over Canadian borders looking for a home. Housing and stabilizing them is a massive job. Our Sheldon Neal visited Montreal and discovered how faith across denominations is serving as a tool of recovery for many asylum seekers.
In a candid video recorded on their phone, Haitian pastor Bartholomew Gaspard and Cynthia Gaspard thanked their church members for mobilizing and donating clothes and resources to Haitian asylum seekers coming in great number to Montreal, Quebec. Their church is responding to the more than 7,000 asylum seekers arriving to their city.
We teach our people to be on mission, and not to go simply to church, but be the church. So God is giving us opportunity to serve others, to be in our community, to make a difference in our community.
Recent statistics by Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada show that as of August, over 27,000 claims for asylum have been filed in Canada. Speaking to some Montrealers on whether they feel their city is equipped to handle such an influx of people, the responses are positive.
Oh, they'll get used to it. They'll get used to it, no problem.
Certainly, yes. But despite the goodwill extended by many, some people say the influx of people illegally crossing the border seeking asylum are jumping the queue. At the center of this argument is the Safe Third Country Agreement, an agreement made between Canada and the U.S., governing where people can claim asylum on either side of the border. The agreement states would-be refugees must claim asylum in the first country they enter, so those crossing into Canada from the U.S. are crossing illegally.
We must inform them about the law of the country, but at first they need some primary help, so we show them love, and after that, when they fill out some forms, we help them about the forms, and also we inform them about the law of the country.
Well, continuing on our year in review, unspeakable tragedy hit England again on May 22nd when a homemade bomb was detonated as families were leaving Manchester Arena following a concert by singer Ariana Grande. 23 people were killed, including many children. Over 500 were injured. The bombing came just 2 months after 5 people were killed in a vehicle ramming terrorist attack in Westminster, London.
Manchester, UK continues to mourn. Tens of thousands are gathering at locations in Manchester and across the country for prayers for the victims. A candlelight vigil was held last night, and Global News Alliance correspondent Peter Wooding was there. Peter, give us a sense of the atmosphere in Manchester right now.
Well, I was there during the vigil that happened outside Manchester Town Hall, where thousands gathered in solidarity. And there was just this overwhelming sense of sadness and sorrow, but united strength that they can overcome hate with love only together. I saw people laying flowers, lighting candles. It was just very moving.
Peter, how is the church responding in the midst of this crisis?
It's been very inspiring to hear that the Billy Graham Rapid Response Team were there within hours, offering to pray for people, praying in the hospital. The church I attend, Audacious Church, is within a few yards of the arena, and people were flocking to the church, just asking for help. They had a prayer vigil last night. And I also spoke to a former police officer who leads the network of churches called Ivy Churches in Manchester. And he's calling people all around the world to pray for justice, for us to be united, for us not to get caught up in hatred. And this is what he had to say about the church's role in all of this.
We're going to do what we always do. We're going to tell people that Jesus Christ is the way, the truth, and the life, that there's love in heaven with everybody's name on it for every person in this city. In the Psalms it says the Lord is close to the brokenhearted.
2017 was a record-setting year for tragic natural disasters across North America, with fires, hurricanes, and earthquakes. And in the U.S., there were 15 separate weather and climate disasters that each caused close to $1 billion in damages. Hurricane Maria became the strongest storm to make landfall in Puerto Rico in 85 years. When it came ashore, it left most of the island's residents without electricity or clean water for weeks.
3 weeks after Hurricane Maria hit, people in Puerto Rico are still picking up the pieces.
We want the people of Puerto Rico to know that their plight challenges the conscience of our country.
The damage to the island of 3.4 million has been called apocalyptic. Thousands are still without power, running water, or even consistent food. The governor of the island has asked Congress for $4.6 billion to meet immediate emergency needs. Some experts say it will take more than a decade to rebuild. We caught up with Frank Famada, a Puerto Rican who experienced the hurricane just outside San Juan.
The night that the hurricane hit, basically, it gives a whole new meaning to the phrase howling winds. The sound was overwhelming, overpowering. You can hear the wind and the gusts hitting the home. And you can hear, even from the very beginning of the hurricane, before the worst part of it hit, you could hear trees falling down and the cracking of the tree barks around the house. Definitely during the storm, I spoke many times with God. One of the main things I just kept praying was for mercy, not just for myself, but for the whole island. Even Jesus said, we will go through struggles, and his promise was he will be with us, even through any crisis that we might face. He will always be with us. I think it's important to know that 3 major hurricanes occurred within a month, which is unheard of. A 100-year storm hit Texas, Hurricane Harvey, and brought 100-year floods. You had a Category 5 storm right after another Category 5 storm, Irma and Maria in the Caribbean. In recorded history, that has never happened. And we're seeing more and more hurricanes of this magnitude become the norm. And I think this brings up the discussion of climate change. We're bringing this onto ourselves, and God is just, he has provided us with free will, and if we want to abuse nature for our own desires, that's just our decision, and we will pay our own consequences. Like Paul says, he is quick to forgive sins, but the consequences of sins are very hard to erase.
Also in 2017, the opioid epidemic in Canada still continued to kill. What kind of resources are going into fighting the crisis? It's not all tax dollars. Former Health Minister Jane Philpott spoke to us on how her Christian faith is getting a workout on this issue.
As we look at any of these crises, of course, our underlying values and principles shape how we look at this. And certainly, as a family doctor, I took care of people who were facing mental illness and addiction, and that had a big impact on my perspective. I certainly know through my faith perspective that every human is a human. Some of those people in this life have gotten a pretty raw deal. We need to all work together to make sure that we respond to the roots of this crisis, that we save people's lives, that we find a way for people to be able to have the hope and healing that it takes to be able to stay alive, to see a better future for themselves and their communities.
Freedom of religion in Canada was also challenged in 2017, most recently Trinity Western University's fight before the Supreme Court for the right to a proposed law school.
We're looking for Trinity Western University's unique law school to be approved in the Canadian context, specifically with respect to the BC Law Society and the Ontario Law Society.
Kuhn says Christian belief about what they deem as sexual norms in Canada is a question of finding common ground with other values held in society.
I don't see this as under attack necessarily. It's just a question of the interface between Christian values and other societal values.
Also in 2017, October, the United States took another hit to its psyche when a gunman opened fire on a crowd of concertgoers on the Las Vegas Strip. 58 people died, over 500 were injured. Joanna Johnson lived to tell the story of surviving that gunfire and tells how, in an instant, her life changed forever.
Around about 10 o'clock, we heard something like fireworks. As I listened, I said, that's not fireworks. That's not fireworks, because it kept going. And as they started running, we heard the gunshot was more and more. And I kept thinking to myself, I said, my job is to get the people out first. But where I worked, there was a big fence there, and we became blocked in. So I sheltered them, and I just started praying. I stood there, and I was like, Lord, just put a shield around us, protect us, because we stuck. We can't go anywhere. And I had my hands like this around the people that were back behind me that were holding on to me, and they were crying, and I'm crying myself. And as I was praying, a gentleman came in front of me. He was real tall, and he had on all white, and he said to me as I'm standing there crying, was just praying and crying, and he said, shh, God's got you. You are protected. And as he said that, I stopped crying. And I looked up, and when I looked up, this pathway had been cleared. It just opened up. When that happened, I told the people that were behind me, get out, get out. And I'm saying to myself, I know I gotta save myself. So I got them out, and then I got out and started running and running and running.
Well, the words church and shooting are never synonymous, and yet the slaughter of 26 innocent people took place in their pews of their own congregation. It happened in a town most of us never knew the name of before the news hit, and Context correspondent Molly Thomas went to the rural community just outside San Antonio.
A faithful symbol of peace and security used to stand tall in this community, but shards of yellow police tape now paint a different picture. Sunday, November 5th took so much from Sutherland Springs: life, laughter, obscurity, and innocence.
This was not racially motivated. It wasn't over religious beliefs. There was a domestic situation going on within the family and the in-laws.
While motivation for mass murder is still unknown, the incident happened in a place of worship, a place that residents call the bedrock of their town. Sutherland will never be the same for neighbors Kathleen and Fred Curnow. They were the first ones to call 911.
When this started, we were in the bedroom, but I just can't be in the bedroom. It's almost an anxiety, and I start hearing the shots and the rhythm.
I mean, you felt it very, very close to home.
It sounded like it was in my home.
Bullets hit their car and even ricocheted off of their home. At one point, the shooter aimed directly at their property after a Good Samaritan, as they call him, rushed to their yard armed to stop him.
Actually, he just used my truck to steady himself and shoot at the guy.
Nightmares of that day are affecting them physically. The couple is struggling to sleep and even eat. But they say they're not giving up.
Our faith is stronger after this, and I know that when our time to go to heaven, we will go. And so I need to just remind myself, remind my husband to back away from that fear and not let that fear control our lives.
Well, this is the most calm that it's really been in this community. Neighbors tell us that there have been generators running, that there's been international media swarming. Of course, there's been tactical units here as well. And, you know, this is a very peaceful area normally. And so finally, after a few days, this is starting to again feel like home.
Part of that healing journey involved walking through the bullet-ridden church.
It was extremely calm in there. It was almost as if, you know, the Lord was there saying, this is what happened, but
this is okay.
And I thought about the children in the back suffering and the people laying there suffering. And I went in and there were, you know, there was very little blood. And, you know, what that had been related back to me, you know, my husband says, no, when your heart stops, it stops. And so that tells me that the people that died in there did not sit there and suffer. You know, I was not a member of the church before this. They were my neighbors for 12 years, and they were great neighbors. And, you know, after this, you know, I told Frank Pomeroy, I said, we'll be at services on Sunday. And he says, okay, well, come on. I said, no, we're going to be at services every Sunday.
Also standing in solidarity is the only other pastor in Sutherland Springs.
We're not going to let this shake. We're not going to let this rip our community apart. It doesn't mean we're not going to remember our friends. Absolutely we will. We weep now, but we believe in the resurrection that we will see our friends again one day in heaven.
Well, those were just some of the stories that we covered here on Context. Heartbreaking, challenging, and always having a perspective that needs to be asked that comes from our heart of following Jesus. You know, it takes a village to broadcast a Christian view of the world, and I'd like to ask if you would join us in that village. We do need your help to pay for this production. We want to continue to journalistically ask into 2018 newsmakers questions that come from our relationship with God. And it's support from viewers like you that make it possible to bring the God side of the stories to light on television and on the web. So in a 24/7, 365-day-a-year news cycle, let's keep Christian thought part of news analysis. Would you consider a donation to Context? We are part of the Crossroads family of media ministry, operating on our own expenses, and your help is needed for Context to continue. So give us a call to donate at 1-800-265-3100 or go online to contextwithlornaduick.com. Just click on donate or drop me an email at info@contextwithlornaduick.com. We would love your financial help to keep broadcasting strong into 2018. Happy New Year. I'm Lorna Duick, and you're watching Context.
Voters turning their outrage into online worldwide trends.
Quebec has an interesting relationship with race and religion.
We'll never arrest our way out of this problem.
I guess the politics ahead of the people on the front lines is more concerning.
It's too dangerous for us to go over to Syria right now.
This is real, isn't it? We could be looking at another Rwanda.
God gave us this amazing place, and what we are doing to it is a sin.
Well, this is an issue our next guest is an expert on.
I think it's going to be very difficult for the province to follow these rules.
What is the standard that the church asks?
And he said, God's got you. You are protected.
How does that get decided, what the Pope will address? Joining me now is Wilma Dirksen.
What you're talking about here is the treatment of women in media and entertainment.
Bad behavior, is it out of control?
Join tonight's important discussion.